celebration of his wedding. And I think actually a vote of thanks is due to both Craig Church and to Craig Manson. And surrounded by new family as well. And it's a wonderful feeling just to be able to expand a small family of mine into such a large family. Most of you come from the West Coast, but being an East Coaster, I don't mind that at all. And hot off the press, Dunfermline actually won again today. And that's
it wasn't football.
It's quite an occasion for me because 30 years ago, this year is the 30th anniversary that my wife and I stood in a similar position. We were married 30 years ago to this year. And I didn't think 30 years ago that I'd be here celebrating the marriage of my first daughter. But it's a wonderful experience. And for those fathers who have been through it, you know exactly what I'm going through at this moment in time. It's been wonderful. Now, I thought, father of the bride, what do we do here? Now, the best advice I've gained so far was bring a checkbook and a clean shirt. Clean shirt, and we use plastic in Fife now. We don't use checkbooks. I thought, no, there's probably a bit more to that than that, so I went on the wonderful internet and started to look, and I came up with a list of things. And they said, okay, have you got everything? Screwdrivers, hammer, wait a minute, that's the wrong list. I hear it, sorry. Wrong list. That was for fixing the car. This is it. Apparently, the father of the bride has a very important role, which is good to know, because it's nice to know that you've got an important role. I have to support my daughter on her wedding day. That is easy. It really is, because Shona has been so calm all day long. And she's actually made me think, what am I doing wrong? Coming down from Glenorchy to Crail in the car was serene. She was what I expected. Am I doing the right thing? None of that. She was wonderful. Shona was wonderful. And she's been wonderful all day long. And don't you think she is one of those beautiful brides we do very well together. And I was more than happy to do that. Big thing. This is pages. It's not really pages, it's only 5 minutes. And welcome the guests in a formal line-up to the wedding reception. Did that, and made a speech, the biggest bit. Now, some people think that I'm long-winded, but I think I'll turn to Rosemary. And that was an unfortunate Sunday morning when somebody had tried me with an excessive amount of alcohol, Gary, the night before, and I was feeling slightly under the weather. I think I had flu. So special, what's special about this day? My daughter got married. What else is special about this day? This day in history, people. The internet is a wonderful thing. On this day in 1949, Robin Gibb of the Bee Gees was born. 1949. Also on this day, in 1895, Wilhelm Röntgen, mother, is that the correct?
No, I haven't heard of him.
German teacher who's never heard of a German physicist makes the first ever X-ray of his wife's hand. It is rumoured that he did so because his wife was so tight-fisted that he really wanted to find out what she was holding in her hand. And on this day in the year 640, now it's good that somebody actually remembered this, the Saracens conquered Egypt and destroyed the library at Alexandria. Now, some of you might not know this, but the library in ancient times Alexandria was the biggest library, the biggest collection of manuscripts in the world. And the Saracens destroyed that. Now, with Shona's enjoyment and love of reading, perhaps it's fitting that she comes together to celebrate her wedding on the day the very day that the Saracens conquered and destroyed Alexandria. Perhaps you're trying to make amends for the echoes from the past. And of course, we've now got another historical milestone in our lives, the shared lives of the Gibsons and the Mansons. And I think it's a wonderful milestone. And of course, I think the two mothers have been waiting all day long, don't you think? This is from a lady who said, "I'm not wearing a hat." But I think she looks lovely. And I've said so several times, so I might get my dinner cooked tomorrow. It seems like only yesterday, honestly, with us fathers amongst us, mothers amongst us, it seems like only yesterday since Shona first came into this world. 4th of November 1978, which was a bit of a winter baby, really. And those of you who know Shona well know that she actually likes to do things in the winter. As we all know, standing outside Craig Church today, with bits of us freezing, because she gets her photograph taken. Shona was a winter baby. I always knew that Shona would get married around this time. And of course, just to start off in her young life, Shona was a little bit of a poorly baby, so it took us a little while before we got her christened. But she was christened on a Sunday that year, which remarkably fell on Christmas Eve. Now, so picture the scene, the Lesbian Memorial Church in Dunfermline, Shona, a little baby in arms, and exactly the same as at Craig, the Christmas tree, the lights, the love of the people, the carols, and perhaps it's the resonance of that that brought Shona to this juncture this fine day, because I knew she would want to have some Christmas carols at her wedding. I just knew it. The church was absolutely beautiful today. It was a wonderful setting. What really sticks in my memory about today is when Shona and Craig were saying their vows to each other, the sun came out and it came through the window, and I thought, you know, if that's going to make a grown man cry. Shona had an unusual upbringing, and yes, she was my daughter, that's unusual enough. However, she grew up in a police house. Now that, for a child, can be a fairly daunting experience, but Shona and Bonnie grew up thinking that this was normal, that you were growing up in a police house, and took it completely for granted when people would suddenly appear on your front doorstep. Usually, I noticed, tourists from the West Coast, who had been out enjoying the pleasures of the beach, and had found this object, and had come up to the police station because it's obviously something of interest. The fact that it has danger, explosive device right across the side of it doesn't seem to matter. I found this on the beach. Seagulls with broken wings, dogs, lost kids, shotguns handed in. You name it, Shona was standing there at the door when these things happened. And it was all part of the rich tapestry of being in the police station and the police house attached to that station. And I think it actually gave them slightly different and slightly more interesting upbringing because this sort of thing was going on. Shona's favourite place when she was 4, sweet shop, toy shop? Nah. The library in Craig. Getting back to the literary thing. Mum would go down to the shops with Pauline and Pram or in Buggy, and Shona would insist on being dropped off at the library so that she could read a book or two, 4-year-old. And she would quite happily sit there and read the book, and be picked up by Mum on the way back to the house. Probably to find yet another seagull with a broken leg. Shona has always had a love of education. The fact is she's now a teacher comes as no surprise whatsoever. The summer before she went to primary school at Craig Primary, a lovely primary school, I think you'll agree, 90 children. She had her first school uniform bought. Now her aunties might remember Shona when she was 4 and a half, displaying her school uniform and wishing to be seen by everybody and wishing to wear the school uniform every second day during the summer, practicing for school. And never was a child ever happier than when she tripped down the road, holding her hands to Craig Primary to start her with sparkles in her eyes and hope for the fatherly approval. Now I can tell that I was up against it when Craig turned up. He wasn't to be put off. He just wasn't. Craig is a very, very determined young man. I think his mum, Rosemary, is looking great here. See, I happen to see it, Derek. He's a very determined young man, and underneath that beguiling grin lies a real steely determination. Sorry, Kate. The first thing I would like to do is, I would sincerely, Craig, like to welcome you into our family. Okay? I think you're going to be a wonderful son. I know you're going to be a wonderful son-in-law. Welcome. I've met his brothers. Right track as well. And I'm possibly one of them that's making a drink that. And Craig chooses his friends carefully as well. Alistair's a wonderful bassman. I think Alistair has supported him extremely well through the game. And I'm looking forward to being part of that extended family. I've got Derek and Rosemary here. Ada and I, my wife and I, have known Derek and Rosemary now for a short time, I think it would be. But in that time, I've learned to have a high regard for Derek and for Rosemary. And I consider them caring, loving, and very genuine people, and I think you will all agree. Foolishly, I agreed, I introduced Craig to curling a year and a half ago. Forgetting about his determined streak, now Craig took to curling like a duck takes to water. Thoroughly enjoys it, obviously enjoys it. And when Craig enjoys something, Craig goes out there to make it happen and be perfect at it. And he is. Craig has come up in the esteem of the local curling. We both belong to Falkland Curling. He's on the committee, for goodness sake. We both belong to Falkland Curling Club, and Craig is held in high regard by his fellow players as being very competitive, but also he likes to make sure that he observes the etiquette of the game, and he does so to its full. And he's proving a very worthy player. And when you see people turning up and realising that Craig's playing against them, that little look comes into their eyes. No. Ada and I could both see the deep love that Craig and Shona. It's out, Craig, it's out. Craig, being Craig, wants to do things right. And Craig knew that I'm deep down an old-fashioned person, and he wanted to do things properly. And quite right, for you to give me permission to take the hand of your daughter. I thought it'd be like that, you know. I had this idea of smoke drifting into the ceiling. Well, the reality wasn't quite the same, but just as enjoyable. If I remember correctly, it was 7 o'clock one Monday morning. Craig determined to do things and get them done. The doorbell goes off, thinking, waits for the lovely do things, a bit early for the postman. Gets up, puts on the dressing gown, opens the door, Ada follows me, think, what on earth's going on? That's well, the parcel delivered. Opens the door, here's Craig and Shona. Light eyes lit up as they come in, and I'm thinking, what's happened? Me standing in a cold hallway, wrapped in dressing gown, half asleep, looking like something the cat had just dragged in. Craig looks me in the eyes, says the much anticipated words, because he knew it was coming. I would like to ask your permission to marry Shona. Now, if that's a moment that's going to put a big lump in my father's throat, here it was. And of course, what was I going to say? Right, no, of course I wasn't. Of course, Craig, I'd be delighted to have you as my son-in-law, and I still am. Now is the It is a problem here. A week later, Generous old me says, let's go out for a meal and celebrate this new engagement. So there we are, sitting round the table, and I think, to get into practice for this speech, I'll have a little speech of my own. So I had a little speech, and I present Craig with a £5 note, because, you know, the father of the bride has to contribute towards the wedding. Fully anticipating that the happy couple would joyfully skip off with my £5 note, buy a basket to Gretchen and me, and do the honourable thing. Now, when Craig realised that this wasn't going to happen, I realised this was going on, I thought, that's fine, I'll get my £5. We are from 5. I'll get my £5 note back. No? Is there a moment of conscience going on here? No. It's okay. It's okay. Current interest rates, compound interest rates. That £5 is now worth £5.25.5. Okay, so and counting. Anyway, enough of my ramblings. The main reason for me being here, ladies and gentlemen, is to welcome this new this new part of the family into our lives, to welcome Craig into our lives, and most importantly, but to toast the new couple. Can I ask you to stand, please? And join me in a toast to the future happiness and health of the bride and groom, Shona and Craig. Shona and Craig.